How does Francois Truffaut, in his first feature film, The 400 Blows, reflect the characteristics of the French New Wave? Before we get into that, we need to know the origins of French New Wave, the associated European art cinemas that influenced it, and the early life of Truffaut himself. Italian neorealism found its origins shortly after World War II, birthed from a restrictive environment of limited film stock, leading to a realist aesthetic, relying on location shooting, handheld camera work, grainy film stock, non-professional actors, and a separation from the cause and effect narrative. Italian neorealism caught the attention of André Bazin, a French film critic who later founded Cahiers du Cinéma, a monthly critical cinema magazine which, in turn, led to the birth of the French New Wave. Truffaut was an unwanted child, being turned over to a wet nurse by his 17-year-old birth mother before moving back with her at the age of 8. He never met his biological father, and instead lived with his mother's new husband, Roland Truffaut, who gave him his name. Young Truffaut suffered a troubled childhood of delinquency and an interest in cinema. He ran away at age 11 after being caught out in an outlandish excuse for skipping school. Eventually, Truffaut founded a film club where he met André Bazin, and later became a writer for Cahiers thanks to Bazin's support. Many writers and critics for Cahiers became directors of their own, including Truffaut, creating his first film, The 400 Blows, which many consider to be the first true French New Wave film. French New Wave followed many characteristics of the Italian neorealism movement, with non-professional actors, on-location shooting, and the separation from the cause and effect narrative. The 400 Blows follows the story of a boy named Antoine Daniel, a child who is seemingly constantly in trouble at school, going home to an unhappy home life. Living with his parents who have little money and seemingly little care for him, he embarks on a downward spiral of lies and theft before being caught by his parents, who turn him in and have him sent to a juvenile detention facility. This narrative may sound familiar. It parallels Truffaut's childhood. This was common with French New Wave films and realism in general, following regular characters through common narratives. Truffaut was unlikely the only child to experience this story firsthand. This personal style is heavily aided by the improvisational nature of the off-the-street actors. Jean-Pierre Lude, who plays Daniel, wasn't a star. Unlike Hollywood, it was uncommon to see familiar faces on the big screen. Furthermore, in the scene where Daniel and his school friend Renee ditch school to go on carnival rides, Lude looks completely undirected. Many scenes were unscripted, with only the loose dialogue provided to the actors. This aided the believability of the characters, since they weren't really acting. Similarly, the heavy use of dead time is indicative of French New Wave. Scenes which don't serve the plot but serve the world the plot is constructed within are a core concept in this film movement. This is presented in the physical education lesson scene, where the teacher leads a class of a diminishing number of children as they peel away in groups to ditch class. This scene doesn't aid Daniel's narrative at all. Another example is the final scene, where Daniel is running along the beach for over a minute, uncut. These serve to reveal the narrative is created for the world, rather than a world created for the narrative, a common distinguishing factor of the French New Wave. The idea of showcasing the world was very common for this film movement. No studio sets were used, and very little, if any, artificial lighting was used either. Everything was filmed in the streets of Paris and on location. Authenticity to regular life was a pillar of the French New Wave era. Truffaut created a turning point in the European art cinema with The 400 Blows, showcasing regular life through his choice of actors, setting, cinematography, and narrative and character design. He paved the way for a new wave of cinema, the French New Wave.